in tandem, and they have to run from the length of the pit straight down to the approach of the Mercedes arena, where there's a little box of cones, one in advance of two others. You have to hit the first one and knock it between the other two, and you do that in the best possible time, unless you brake very late, in which case you almost end up in out and out, and you obliterate all of them. Yes, as 1 and 2 did yesterday, so it's quite good fun, it's quite spectacular. We had the professionals competition yesterday and the amateurs practice, and they're going to be out, the AMs, for their competitive run at the end of today. So there in the pit lane, the GT4 contingent gets ready, including number 22, which is another of these rapid KTMs that we have garnered for the weekend. And that car in the hands of David Klaar and Lennart Marianec. Lennart, who is one of the Reiter young stars and drives in the Blancpain GT Series Endurance Championship these days for GT3 machinery, but came out of the KTM Crossbow Championship a season ago. Down to the end of the pit lane they come. We've had already 2 races at 2 venues, so 2 at Most and 2 at the Red Bull Ring, and Hamza Ovega was the winner as a soloist in the first one at Most, and then the combination of the Niederhausers, Marilyn and Patrick, they were victorious in the second race there. At the Red Bull Ring, it was the Maserati of Romeo Dall'Antonio and Giuseppe Fasicola that won the first, and Jan Kasperlik and Rob Severs, the Porsche, victorious in the second race. And you've got Pro-Am and Am classes. You can't have an all-pro, there's got to be a Pro-Am as the upper level. So wins there have gone twice, in fact, to the Niederhausers. Once to the Chodzens, because they were 3rd overall at the Red Bull Ring, and then Jan Kasperlik and Rob Severs won last time out. The AMs, Ivan Velachkov has had 2 wins. They both came in the Czech Republic at Most. There he is in the Sin. Also, the Maserati of Dall'Antonio and Fasicola has had a win. That was in Austria. And Daniel Laber, who I think is absent this weekend, he was victorious at the Red Bull Ring. Number 41 then is Nicholas Schürrle and Freddie Kramer, and as the session staggers through, we'll get an idea as to who has put who into the car first and who's qualifying. So it's 50 Anthony Chodzen to go first. Number 7, the eSky WP Racing Team Maserati will have Maciej Marcinkic first. 47 is a soloist anyway, Freddie Fass, so that's easy to do. Number 4 will be Jean-Louis Jasper in the Phoenix Racing Audi. 41, Freddie Kramer, and even Velachkov is on his own. And then number 25, the Hurlinger Reiter car, will be Ilmari Korpavara with his KTM. More to confirm as they venture out.
But Freddie Fast, what a great name for a racing.
Yes, assuming it's a real one, because there is always this tendency at the Nurburgring, isn't there? Certainly in the 24 hours, that lots of people appear under pseudonyms. But
yeah, Spider-Man, Superman.
Yeah. But Freddie Fast goes up with Will Power and Scott Speed, doesn't he? They're the perfect trio of drivers. There is Jean-Louis Jasper in the almost martini-coloured Phoenix Audi, heading up towards the timing line. They get 20 minutes, so the number of laps that they can squeeze in here, limited. Jean-Louis Jasper then over the timing line, trying to get some warmth into the rubber. And driver that's raced in the North European GT4 Championship, as well as in the 24-hour series, goes through, gets himself up behind the Mercedes there, and then past the Mercedes. So Jean-Louis Jasper making good his escape now, buying himself clear track space. Anthony Chodzen has done a 2 minutes 14, so there's a lot of time yet to be found in this session.
Yes. I do love the sound of those Mercedes, though. They sound like Messerschmitts.
You do, don't they? They're great noise, the Mercedes make. Oscar Tunjo, number 3, out on track. Now he's going to be one to watch, the Colombian driver, because he's had a pretty good single-seater pedigree, got as far as Formula Renault 3.5 before turning to GT cars. And Ilmar Korpavara, the Finn, former Clio racer, he's done the absolute best within the middle sector now, so the times are going to start tumbling. Jean-Louis Jasper up towards the completion of the lap as he comes through the Ad Van Bogen. Speed building, but he's got the track to himself here.
Yeah, absolutely clear.
The GT cars, if you were following the live stream yesterday, you will observe run the softer chicane. So that's the one that means you don't have to slow down quite so much, and it maintains the speed and the momentum, whereas for the trucks, to try and make sure they don't go above 100 miles an hour. They're always being limited, and so they use the tighter run through the chicane. Over the timing line then goes Jean-Louis Jasper. He goes quickest, 1 minute 35.140.
That's good. But interestingly, I mean, the trucks are only like 20, 22 seconds slower than these cars.
Yes.
Which just shows how quick those trucks really are.
Absolutely right, yes. The GT4 category that's been around for well over a decade now, but it's only really in the last 18 months or so that it's really exploded in the way that it has, with multitudinous championships now run by SRO, the Stefan Rotella organisation, and more manufacturers being tempted into the series. Initially, when the series began, when the category began, it was tuners taking a car and trying to make it into a racer, and it kind of worked, and it always had this great potential but never really exploited it. And then in recent years, the likes of Porsche and Mercedes and then McLaren latched onto the fact that there was this whole range of people wanting to do track days, and we could make a market, and if we're going to make cars for that, then we could do them to GT4 spec. And now, with so many turnkey cars available, the whole category GT4 racing has really caught on, perhaps to the detriment of the low volume manufacturers. But there, Ivan Vlachkov still second fastest with the Sin, 141.333.
Very dramatic car.
Yes, it's almost Group C sports car type, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you don't see many on the road, do you?
No, and I believe that's the only R1 currently running in the world.
Is that right? We've had one or two more racing, but I think they've met their doom.
Fiery ends.
Yeah. So up towards the softer chicane, the motorbike chicane, comes Vlachkov. This lap not looking quite so good. Jean-Louis Jasper last time then, 132.688. Marcinkiewicz is third fastest now in number 7, which is the better of the Maseratis. Rob Severs, I think we'd put into 43 with Jan Kasperlik, former BMW racer. Mad Siljehaug could be one to watch. He's sharing with Marilyn Niederhauser, number 26. Siljehaug's quick. 20, Franco Kovac behind the wheel. Lennart Marionette we put into 22, the renumbered KTM, and Giuseppe Fascicolo into 77 Maserati. So gradually, everyone being shepherded out onto the circuit, and you've got the rankings there, but remember, it's the driver Jean-Louis Jasper who is setting the time. Anthony Chodzon goes up to second fastest. Chodzon 136.624 now, number 50 in the Maserati. There's number 3 Audi, which is Oscar Tunjo at the wheel of it, the Colombian driver, former Carter, Formula BMW racer. He was the runner-up in the Pacific Championship to Richard Bradley, now the international sports car star. And then Tunjo carried on in single-seaters. He went through Formula Renault 2-litre, 3.5, got as far as GP3, but then his career rather faltered. So he had occasional outings in the Spezial Tourenwagen Trophy, the German GT touring car category. Oh dear, 50's in strife. And that is Anthony Chodzon, who was second fastest. He's fallen to third behind Ilma Corpovara. And I think Chodzon has just had a spin coming out of the hairpin, hasn't he?
Looks like it, yes. But Tunjo was setting the fastest times yesterday in the practice.
Oh, he's a handy peddler, all right. And having, as I say, had that season of club racing almost, he came into the ADAC GT Masters, so he knows about a GT car. But at the moment, do we have a lap time out of Tunjo? Not a proper one. It's a start-up lap, really, that he's done.
Yeah.
Siljehaug has just done the absolute best in the last sector. So Mad Siljehaug looking quick. Here comes Oscar Tunjo then down towards the Coca-Cola curve, heading up towards the timing line. And he'll come through in a moment, break the beam. And where will this lap put him? Giuseppe Fascicolo goes through ahead of him, and over the timing line goes Oscar Tunjo. And that, again, is not stellar. It's a 1:39.065. I know he's got 11 more minutes of the session still to run, but there's certainly more to come out of that car.
Yeah.
Through he turns. It's interesting, isn't it, when you compare, and we had it at the 24-hour race, the GT3 and the GT4 equivalents, because you can see the shape within both, but you take all the aerodynamic aids off the GT3 car, and it almost looks naked in GT4 trim like this.
Yeah. But then Phoenix Racing have got a lot of experience right here setting these cars up.
True. And they're based just over the road, aren't they?
And they're just over the road in Marspan, yeah. But these GT4s are so sleek down the straights and fast. That's where they get their best.
Yeah, this bullet-shaped Cayman through again. This is Freddie Kramer at the wheel of 41, former rally driver, but he's another man with lots of experience of not just single-seaters, but also GT cars. Freddie Kramer came quite a long time ago out of the Ferrari Challenge into GT3 racing, and will be perhaps the quicker of the two in that car. 25, this is the Ilma Corpivara Benjamin Mazatis KTM. Corpivara doing driving duties in this session, second fastest, only 6/10 back from Jean-Louis Jasper, and 88 thousandths up on Mads Siljehoog.
The timing gets worse, doesn't it? 88,000 up.
It's incredibly close, isn't it?
Yeah.
Back out after his spin, incidentally, has got Anthony Chodson. Just going through pit out at the moment. And we've had a lap time deleted, oh dear, from Mads Siljehoog, having just talked him up. It'll be for exceeding track limits at turn 4, which is coming out of the Mercedes arena on that little run to the hairpin. He's had his lap time deleted. So now we've got Oscar Tunjo up to second fastest, number 3 Audi. Oscar Tunjo 14 thousandths behind the sister car of Jean-Louis Jasper. You can't say that the Phoenix cars aren't evenly matched, can you?
No, absolutely not. Well, he seems to be on song now, Tunjo, so that's good.
Yeah, it took him a while to get going, didn't it, really?
Yeah.
Get everything up to temperature, but as you rightly say, Martin, he's going for it now. So Tunjo might even bag pole position yet. Now, Mads Siljehoog, all fired up, having had his lap time taken away, has just done the absolute best in the first sector. You're looking at Tunjo, who is on a mission, and he's done a personal best in Sector 1. Not an absolute best, but a personal best. So he needs to try and claw back another 10th or 2 in this next sector. Climbs the curb, but avoids that marker. Dug deep into the ground.
Yeah.
That's really there for the benefit of errant lorries to keep them on the straight and narrow. But the GT contingent getting more and more leery as the weekend goes on as well, as they feel they can push that little bit harder up to the chicane now. Traffic ahead might be an issue on this lap. And Tunjo has lost second because Lennart Marionetch now has gone quickest. Lenny Marionetch, 132.280. But here comes Tunjo then with a personal and an absolute best. Number 3 Audi comes across the timing line and goes into pole position. Oscar Tunjo 131.781. So comfortably quicker than they were doing yesterday. That's a good effort, isn't it?
That's like 2 seconds quicker than yesterday.
Yeah. Marilyn Niederhauser, that we've not yet seen on track, leads the Pro-Am Championship from Mazatis and Ilmar Corpivara. So Mads Siljehoog, having done the absolute best in Sector 1, ended up being 5th on a 132.546, but Oscar Tunjo then with the best GT4 time of the weekend is currently the fastest. And Mads Siljehoog, it's still telling us, has had a lap time deleted for track limits at turn 4 now. If that's the same message, fair enough. If it's another lap, then he's going to be incurring the wrath of the officials.
Yes.
They're constantly doing it. Jean-Louis Jasper onto pole position now. 131.737. The margin between the two teammates is 44 thousandths of a second. It shows how precise the timing is these days.
Yes, yes.
Go to Australia, in fact, they do it to tens of thousandths of a second, to 4 digits, but to the thousandth, 44 thousandths between the two Audis. Exceptional.
Exceptional.
And look at that for track limits. Way up the curb on the inside, Jean-Louis Jasper hooks 2 wheels onto the AstroTurf, then runs a little bit wide coming out of turn 4, but there's nothing being left on the table here. This is maximum commitment, isn't it?
Yeah, but taking those corners is just a bit too much. It's unsettling the car as he comes out of the corner, so he's actually losing. That's terrible. Sorry, my opinion. And, stops you getting the power down.
So 6 minutes of this race 1 grid setter still to go. And it is Jean-Louis Jasper then who is the fastest from Oscar Tunjo. But Tunjo's on another mission. He's done the absolute best in Sector 1. So number 3 Audi will be in this middle part of the lap with the Bilstein curve being completed now. This is the run down the hill. There is Tunjo.
And that softer chicane is allowing them to keep the speed through into the Jaguar corner.
Freddie Fast just confirming it is a pseudonym. I'm working on what the real name is, but I was right to predict it.
Oh, right.
It's a shame, really.
That's a shame. Yeah, that's disappointing.
It's probably called Freddie Speed, really.
Yeah.
Up towards the line, then comes Oscar Tunjo, and that's quicker again.
Oh, goodness.
A 1:31.437. So now it's a massive margin of 0.3 of a second. So number 3, Oscar Tunjo, now to the top of the times.
Nice, tidy driving. That's very good.
Yes, indeed. So what have we got left? Just under 5 minutes. It's interesting, actually, how many people are staying out. We saw yesterday, I know it's a different category altogether, but the truck qualifying, certainly for Super Pole, they were really doing 2 laps, just one Banzai lap, let everything cool, one more, that was it. Whereas 20 minutes of GT racing on Pirelli rubber, and again, you're talking of different racing machines, I'll grant you, but they're staying out for the bulk of it. Ilmari Kopavara here.
Some of that's down to the brakes of the trucks, though, because they just get so hot. If they get too hot, they just fracture, and some of them can disintegrate. They're like space machines, these KTMs, though, aren't they?
Now, we don't see many of these on the road in the UK, but are they to be found on the roads over here?
Yeah, they're quite common over here, but then everything's quite common over here. There's quite a few come up from Luxembourg at the weekends for Touristfahrer. Right. And they're what engine? 2 litre? Well, I'm not sure.
Right. But they don't weigh very much from memory.
No.
And KTM, when GT4 started, used to run the crossbow in open form, didn't it?
This new hydraulic funny lid is new.
And it makes them look perhaps more a complete car.
Yeah.
But in the early days, they were very quirky little things. But GT4 really has moved on a huge way from KTM and Ginettas taking on Guido Kennis with his BMW Z4 in the early days of the championship, for example. You've always had BMW M3s and the occasional Porsche, but like I said earlier, it's only in the last couple of seasons, really, that it's taken off in the way it has. Mads Siljehoug keeps yo-yoing up and down the order, and he's back up to 3rd now. This is Lenny Marionech. Way up the curb in the Reiter Engineering run car. Marionech, who we saw with a rather elderly BMW Z4 GT3 car in the ADAC GT Championship 2 or 3 years back with Marcus Palteler, but he's now racing in Blancpain, having come through the Reiter Young Stars programme. The Sin that we were talking about earlier on, 7th fastest of Ivan Brachkov, and slowest, in fact, at the moment, number 20, which is the Franjo Kovac driven Mercedes. Freddie Fast had an off yesterday, incidentally. He went off at the end of FP1 and missed FP2 while they were doing repairs. Jean-Louis Jasper has had a lap time deleted for track limit abuse at turn 4.
Okay.
So there's another driver in strife. All right, that's Siljehoug pressing on, and there, 47 up to the timing line is the aforementioned Freddie Fast.
So he's driving solo in this competition.
So just 90 seconds of this part of qualifying to go. The Mercedes is another great car, booms along.
they're big cars. I've driven one, and they're physically big cars, and they feel big when you're inside them.
So the flag is imminent.
Yeah, 40 seconds left. Tunjo still at the top of the leaderboard.
And at the foot of it is Franjo Kovac, unfortunately. Kovac, the Croatian, 63 years of age, very experienced driver, but to a given level. And he is 3 seconds or so off the pole time. There's the Sky-backed number 7 Maserati of Maciej Marcinkiewicz at the wheel. Mads Siljehoeg has gone up to second now behind Oscar Tunjo. Jean-Louis Jasper down to fourth after having his best lap taken away, and the flag is out then.
Yeah.
I think that Marcinkiewicz got another lap out of this just before the flag, and he's certainly pressing on, isn't he?
Yeah, I think they touched there. Doesn't look like there's any damage though.
So a number now taking the flag in the pits rather than staying out. Oscar Tunjo then having done that gun time. He is the fastest. Way up the curb goes Freddie Fast in the background. And a replay here of going rather deep into turn 1, number 7.
Yeah.
You get the first part of this Mercedes arena wrong, and it puts you on the wrong line all the way through, doesn't it?
Through all the other curves, yeah, indeed.
But even allowing for that, the closing speed that Marcinkiewicz had, pretty impressive here as he dives to the inside.
Yeah.
That's Franjo Kovac just up the
just
road.
Here, I think they just touched. Yep, just maybe just he moved out of the way, I think.
If they didn't, it was close, certainly, wasn't it?
Very close, yeah.
So the last couple take the flag. You can see everybody else coming into the pit lane. And if the teams are on their toes, they will bring the car in early because it gives you a little bit more time to do the driver change and cycle through everything ready for the next part of qualifying. So a quick look at who did what. The Phoenix Racing Audi then of Oscar Tunjo, the fastest, 1 minute 31.437, 0.128 of a second up on Mads Siljehoeg for the KTM contingent ahead of Ilmari Corpevara. 4th quickest, Jean-Louis Jasper's Audi ahead of Lenny Marionech with the KTM. 6th fastest, Rob Sever's Porsche Cayman, which was quick yesterday but struggling a bit today. Yeah. The best of the AMs, Ivan Vlachkov 7th in the Sin ahead of Giuseppe Fasicola and Maciej Marcinkiewicz, with the top 10 rounded out by Freddie Fast. Anthony Chodzin was 11th. Freddie Kramer, rather disappointing, only 12th quickest, and then Franjo Kovac rounding out the 13 that we have for these two 1-hour races. So the Central European Cup for GT4 cars still growing in numbers, but with the increasing popularity of GT4 racing, there was the main European Championship at Misano last week, which after perhaps a little bit of damage and mechanical drama for 1 or 2 might have affected the entry for this weekend, but largely this is a different entry normally, and interesting to see who the stars are in this category this weekend.
And hopefully this time Rob Severs won't collect any damage from errant Maseratis.
So the teams now get 10 minutes to do whatever work they need to do the driver change, to get the second driver settled in, for the 2 drivers to discuss data, to discuss track conditions, to discuss the car, should it be needed. And then we go again for the second 20-minute period of qualifying. Absolutely fabulous weather at the Nurburgring.
Oh, yeah.
And you can see for miles looking into the distance there.
Yes. And thankfully, we have working air conditioning in the box.
Yes, indeed. Yes, it makes life a lot more pleasant.
Yeah, I've just looked online, and it is a 2-litre engine in the KTM. So
a brand more perhaps associated with motorbikes, but these GT4 cars, the crossbow, getting more and more popular.
a friend of mine took some fantastic photographs at the ice curve on the Nordschleife of a KTM open top.
Right.
Hitting the curbs and landing all 4 wheels off the ground on the barrier, skimming along the barrier into ice curve, then came off and carried on the lap.
So if nothing else, we know they're tough.
They're tough cars, yeah. Little plug there for Jochen of Frozen Speed.
Are they popular cars for track days as well?
Yeah,
not just
they're
racing?
very popular.
Yeah.
You know, they're a bit like those aerial atoms. You know, the power to weight ratio is just incredible. But you know, you're very exposed. But no more so, I suppose, than a normal convertible, I would.
Sure. Yeah. So we'll have this second element getting underway very shortly. And it is due to get underway in 4 minutes' time, give or take. And the live stream after it will cover the Mittelrhein Cup qualifying session, and then in turn our first FIA European Truck Racing Championship race of the weekend, which has got Antonio Albacete starting on pole position.
Yep, he was on fire yesterday.
Did a great job, didn't he?
But the times are just, it was a split of minuscule parts of a second.
Yes, quirkily, Albacete's not had a race win yet this year, but it can't be far away. But we will come to the ETRC in an hour or so's time. So for now, it's a case of getting the next driver ready, getting everybody settled and sorted, and then we will be good to go.
And in the picture here, you can see the KTM with the quirky hood that's now fitted to it, which reminds me of a friend's car way back in the 70s. It was a Nova kit car.
Right.
And it had the same quirky sort of hood that opened up and came forward on hydraulics, based on Volkswagen mechanicals. But he had it tuned. But, so what goes round comes round, what I'm saying, basically.
It's an interesting way of adapting the car, isn't it?
Yeah.
You could have conventional doors, but that gives it more personality, perhaps.
Yeah. Maybe it was an easier technical solution just to prop that lid straight on to the frame that was already there, rather than reconstructing a whole body. And there behind the paddock you can see Nurburgring Castle. Beautiful picture. So Marlon will be jumping into the number 26 car for the second session, I assume. And she's leading the Pro-Am standings with 74 points. Her boyfriend Patrick's not here this weekend. I don't...
No, I'm trying to work out where he is. Because he gets roped in to do lots of different championships. But no, you're right, he's not. Yes, boyfriend rather than relative, even though they've got the same surname.
Yeah, I mean, what are the odds?
What are the
of
odds,
that?
exactly?
Yeah.
Yes.
Race drivers meet each other, same surname, and end up in the same team.
It was meant to be.
Yeah, yeah. And she doesn't even have to change her name if they get married.
Indeed, indeed.
But he did a blinding lap in the last race in was it Misano?
Yes, in the European Championship. Yes.
Yeah.
So for the Central European Cup GT4 drivers, we will be good to go very, very shortly. And this qualifying period, again, over 20 minutes. So now Gassaya Radest will take over number 3 Audi for Phoenix. You'll get Helmut Rödig into number 4. Helmut Rödig, regular in the 24-hour series. Number 7 Maserati will now go to Lukas Kreschke, another GT4 regular. Ivan Vlachkov does another session in the Sin. Now, the number 20 Mercedes goes the way of Cora Schumacher, the ex-wife of Ralf Schumacher, who's done quite a lot of racing, initially back in 2004 in a Mini, but then after a few years of one-mate racing, had quite a long spell away, came back in the DTC, the 2-litre German saloon car category in 2015, and into GT4 last year. Anyway, she will drive number 20 Mercedes. 22 that Lennart Marionech was working his wonders in. David Klaar now takes that over in his first season of car racing, the former kart racer. Benjamin Mazatis, ex-Formula 4 racer, will go in the KTM that Ilmari Corpevara was driving. Marilyn Niederhauser takes over from Mads Siljehaug. Nicholas Schürl will drive the Porsche that Freddie Kramer was in. Jan Kasperlik, another GT4 regular, takes over from Rob Severs, the BMW dealer. Freddie Fast goes again, and Dad, Piotr Chodzen, drives 50, 77 now for the Italian engineering contractor, Romy Dall'Antonia, the former Italian hill climber, an autocrosser, a motorbike racer. So out they all pour, and we are in business for another 20 minutes.
Yep, here comes the Maserati.
I don't think you could get further removed, could you, from a GT4 car to a racing truck and vice versa, but the fans being treated to something very different this weekend. So out on track, everybody goes. We will discount the outlap, and as we saw from the earlier session, they can do a lot of laps on a given run, so you can expect the times to come down and down and down as these 20 minutes wear on. They're coming out of the Bilstein curve is the KTM. That is 22, which is the now David Klaar driven car. And there is Marilyn Niederhauser in the, dare one call it, rather girly livery of pink and purple. Mads Siljehaug might disagree, but...
yeah. Yeah, Mads won't be happy with that description.
No. Well, it's either girly or it looks like a bruise, I think, depending on which way you want to look at it. But anyway, over the line it comes. Marilyn Niederhauser onto a flying lap now. And remember that we're looking at something in the low 30s from that earlier session.
Yeah.
Not that these will be affected by what went earlier. This is a completely standalone session. But it's going to be interesting to compare the two. Here she comes then, Marilyn Niederhauser. Back onto the power, and now the sprint down towards the hairpin at turn 4.
So David Klaar in the 22 car.
So there's 25, which is now Benjamin Mazatis, who came out of the Formula BMW Talent Cup 2 or 3 seasons ago through Formula 4, but has made a name for himself of late in GT4. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say that the KTM cars don't seem to be suffering so much down the straight as they did at Mizan.
Oh, they're holding their own here, aren't they?
Yeah.
And Mazatis has just done a 1:34.508. There's a rather cautious Maserati venturing out, which is sorry, not Giuseppe Fasicola now, Romy Dall'Antonio at the wheel.
Yeah.
Right, there's Vlachkov. Now, he's perhaps here, Martin, got an advantage, hasn't he, over anybody else, because he knows exactly what the track conditions are like. He's been out there for 20 minutes already.
Absolutely, and he knows what the car's doing and how it's handling and the heat of the tyres and where the grip is.
I tell you what, that livery really helps that car. It looks really purposeful, doesn't it?
Yes, yes.
In the past, I seem to remember they were either sort of all white or all yellow, but they're like a proper racing car, dare one say.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah, the ones I've seen before have all been all yellow.
And it makes a good noise.
It's a good, yeah, it's a V8, I believe. Used for only 200,000 euros.
A snip.
Snip.
It's a Bulgarian made car, incidentally.
Yeah.
6.2 litre V8 engine.
Yeah. But I believe there's a UK connection as well.
I'm trying to remember the name of the man that created them, but I think he lives in the UK.
Yeah.
I did race them. Rosendaskaloff. Yes. And he does live in the UK and race them himself, Rosendaskaloff. So although they're based in Bulgaria, he is based in the UK himself, or has a residency in the UK. Right, time's starting to tumble, and it is relevant that we talk about the Sin, because Vlachkov is the fastest, 1 minute 32.673 now. Benjamin Mazatis for the KTM squad, second fastest, and has just done the absolute best in the first sector. And number 7, which should now be Lukasz Kreszki, but is still being shown as being Marcinkiewicz, has done an absolute best within the middle sector.
Yeah.
So I'm slightly puzzled about number 7.
Yeah.
Vlachkov, Mazatis, Marilyn Niederhauser the top 3, and it's 0.168 of a second at the moment between Vlachkov and Mazatis. Across the timing line has just gone Cora Schumacher, who's done a 1 minute 38.048. Perhaps there's going to be more of a spread of times here, because you've got arguably more of the AMs doing the times. But that said, Vlachkov, 2 absolute best in the sectors.
Yeah. Purple patch even.
Indeed so, and he's just done a purple lap, in other words, an absolute best of the session, 131.792. So Vlachkov looking good here. There, bouncing over the curb a little bit, is 25 Benjamin Mazatis. We've got another improvement coming now from 41, that being a change of driver, is it not? Because Nicholas Scholl, who was on the entry list, has been replaced by Jürgen Bolting, and Scholl moves into 43 instead of Jan Kasperlik, by the look of it. So apologies, the entry list that we have has been slightly distorted, so we'll try and make more sense out of all of this. So 43, well, Nicholas Scholl was shown as being the driver of that car yesterday with Rob Severs, so we'll move him into 43. And so 41, Freddie Kramer and Joachim Bolting. So that means that the one that we lose is Jan Kasperlik. So Nicholas Scholl with work to do. In contrast, Joachim Bolting doing a good job 5th fastest, now that we've unravelled all the Porsches. Questions will be asked later.
Yes. Roddick using all the curbs there through the chicane.
And Vlachkov, who is the fastest, is now pitted as Josiah Radest, second quickest, heads up towards the timing line now and goes through but doesn't go any quicker. This is out by 0.4 of a second. Marilyn Niederhauser is currently 5th. And the rogue number 7 of Marcinkiewicz shown as being 4th quickest, 1:33.366, but confirmation of the driver of that we'll get in a moment, I'm sure. 26 Marilyn Niederhauser goes through. Benjamin Mazetis, second fastest, absolute best in the last sector. Josiah Radest, you're looking at, she's just done a personal best within sector 1. So this could be quite impressive, actually.
Yeah. On a mission, as they say. Nicely done through the chicane.
Confirmation about number 7. It is Maciej Marcinkiewicz to do both sessions because Lukas Kreschke isn't feeling very well this morning. Whether he will race remains to be seen. But if he does, presumably he'll have to do the second stint anyway because he won't have qualified the car. So it is correct that Marcinkiewicz is doing driving duties.
It's a lot better. Thanks, Misha.
Right, Josiah Radest then still pressing on, 4th fastest. The last lap started well, but then rather unravelled and very, very wide at turn 2 there.
Yeah, which messes up the next turn.
It does, doesn't it? You're sort of put on the back foot all the way through that section of the circuit. The number 50, Piotr Chodzan Maserati through, and that's currently 12th, so a bit of work to be done yet by Chodzan. And the Romy Dall'Antonia Maserati flattering to deceive a little bit, that car, because they've had a win at the Red Bull Ring, but it's only 10th fastest for the moment, so maybe this is not a Maserati circuit. Struggling to wring the pace out of the car, seemingly.
Yeah, but Tunja was doing so well yesterday and this morning. So
in the Audi, yeah. That's Cora Schumacher. Out of turn 1, whoops, getting far too deep into turn 1 into the Mercedes arena, Romy Dall'Antonia. So Dall'Antonia survives, but after a moment, after a little excursion there. They look big cars, the Maseratis. They look really long, don't they, in comparison? This being one of those that runs within the AM Cup, which is headed at the moment by the overall pole man. Vlachkov changed that because now Nicholas Scherl, number 43, has gone to the top of the times, 1:31.706. So he was struggling earlier on, but there he is. Nicholas Scherl goes fastest of all and by 86 thousandths of a second. So a good effort put in there by the Porsche.
Yeah. They are very slick in down the straights. Streamlined. My current favourite car.
I mean, inclined to agree on that score. But in terms of the noise, where do you go, Maserati or Mercedes?
Yeah, noise-wise, yeah. Oops. Just under 7 minutes left.
Yeah. And Nicholas Scherl, in his first season of car racing, with a good karting pedigree, coming there now up towards the exit of the Bilstein curve. But I think the traffic might be hobbling him a little bit on this lap. The Allied Racing Porsche just being slightly delayed. He's quickest of all, and we've got the leading 5 covered by less than a second here. Now there's Marilyn Niederhauser, who's only 10th fastest here. Martin, what's going on?
Yeah, Jaguar curves down the straight, so we'll get a time, but doesn't look quick.
It was a 1:33.625, so 3/10 down on what she'd been doing earlier on. Marilyn Niederhauser goes no quicker then. 5.5 minutes are still on the clock. Through the turn 1 hairpin. The road dialing back on itself, then it opens up a little bit through 2 and 3, this long looping left, and then there's the right at turn 4. So get it wrong into turn 1 and you're on the back foot all the way through this next sequence. Of course, which is used as part of the paddock for the 24-hour race, and then you rejoin there just as she came out of turn 4.
Yeah.
So it's Porsche, Sin, KTM, Audi, the top 4 at the moment. And then remember for number 7 that Maciej Marcinkiewicz has done both qualifying periods here. 5th quickest, number 7. Josiah Rodess pressing on, number 3. But can she get anything else out of this car? Another former single-seater racer, race in the UK in the Winter BRDC F4 Championship, but it's in Volkswagens that she made her name initially, in the Castrol Cup, in the Sirocco Cup, and then in Audis with the TT Cup. Has raced in the IMSA Sports Car Challenge in the States, as well as in TCR in Germany. So very experienced driver is Josiah Rodess. Down now towards turn 1. That last lap was no quicker, but she missed out by just under a 10th. So she's trying hard.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that the races are an hour, the tyres have got to be durable because they don't want to do a tyre change, so you can anticipate many laps out of them in a 20-minute qualifying period. Nicholas Schurler's just gone through again. That was a slower lap because of the traffic, but the speed with which he went down towards turn 1 suggests that he's on another mission.
And, Cora Schumacher is way slow. She's 5 seconds off the leads.
And Joachim Bolting's Porsche has had a lap time deleted for track limit abuse at turn 4, so it's coming out of the arena, running really, really wide onto that short straight down to the hairpin. There is Bolting. Cayman, this bullet-shaped baby Porsche, coming into the Coca-Cola curve. Are we Coca-Cola or Jaguar these days?
Jaguar.
Jaguar, is it now? It depends which track map you look at, but it's hard to keep up with sponsors. So, Jaguar curve. Yeah. Right. At least it's not by numbers like most circuits are these days.
Yeah. That's better with names.
Absolutely.
Better with names.
Absolutely. I can long remember this press conference at the very first Valencia street race Grand Prix, walking into the press conference, and Bob Constanduras was talking to Fernando Alonso about the circuit and about corner names and numbers, and of course all the drivers and the engineers just say turn 1, turn 2. And Bob had started this sentence he couldn't get out of about British tracks with names and Knickerbrook at Alton Park, and you could see Fernando Alonso glaze over thinking, what is this man talking about? Trying to explain to anybody how Knickerbrook got its name is hard enough, never mind in a foreign language. Yeah. But at least, yes, here they might be sponsors, but we have got names. I suppose the one exception is the Michael Schumacher S, isn't it, which is on the full Grand Prix circuit.
Yeah.
So out of the hairpin, a.k.a. turn 5, comes Cora Schumacher. This is the Ravenel curve into the Bilstein curve, otherwise known as the S's. And then speed building to the Advan Bogen, and then up towards the chicane, and then the Jaguar curve. So there's the Mercedes. And again, we had this at the 24 hours with the GT3 and the GT4 cars together, and you contrast the two. And these with very, very limited aero indeed. A great entryway into GT racing. And for the drivers, you know, you're getting a lot of track time at some nice venues, and it's a good category to be involved in. To the pit lane comes Josiah Rodess. That's it, I think. She'll call it a session from that.
Yeah.
So we've had 4 races and 4 different winners, one of whom is absent this weekend. In fact, Hamza Avega, and another 2 drivers that have been part of winning crews absent as well. Patrick Niederhauser missing this weekend, and Jan Kasperlik missing this weekend. So it does leave the way clear for 1 or 2 others to come through and take some glory, doesn't it?
Yep. Oh, a bit wide for the Maserati. This is Peter.
All recovered well.
Yep. Lovely livery though. I like that, the white and the wine.
It's classy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what have we got left? 29 seconds. If anybody is not on a quick lap now, it's not going to come. And in fact, more and more of them are calling it a session early, aren't they, heading for the pit lane. So we're almost done, I think, here. Nicholas Schürrle, very impressive indeed to get the top time. And giving Porsche something to cheer about here. The Allied Racing squad ahead then of the Sin of Ivan Vlachkov. Then it's Audi, thanks to Gasar Rodest. Then it's KTM, Benjamin Mazatis. And here you've got number 4, Helmut Rödig, and he goes for the pit lane. So I think we've seen, although it's not a bad effort by Rödig, that Jean-Louis Jasper is the quicker in that car. And what, again, is always fascinating about these two-driver races is the different speeds of the two drivers and how a car will rise and fall in a given stint depending on who's behind the wheel. And so if you've got a soloist that's consistent, as Vlachkov is, over the course of an hour, could he be a race winner? So we'll look forward to the first of the GT4 races, which will get underway at 13:40 this afternoon, and we'll have that covered on the live stream. We'll be on air at 13:25 with the build-up to that race, which will last, as I say, for an hour. And then after a short break after that, we'll have our 2 further truck races and the second part of the go-stop. So we will continue on the ADAC Truck Grand Prix live stream for the Mittelrhein Cup qualifying, and then the first race for the FIA European Truck Racing Championship. That's still to come as the GT cars make their way over the timing line to take the checkered flag, and then for the pit lane at the end of this second qualifying period. But an intriguing start to the day to see how different drivers have fared.
Yeah, so Scholl's fastest lap means that he is 24 seconds quicker around the track than the Han, just as a comparison.
Car to truck,
Car to truck, yeah.
So confirmation of the times then at the end of Q2. Nicholas Schürrle faster than Ivan Vlachkov by 86 thousandths. Gasar Rodest bags third from Benjamin Mazatis, and then the best of the Maseratis of Romeo Dall'Antonio from, again behind the wheel, Maciej Marcinkiewicz. 7th, Helmut Rödig from David Klar, and then Marilyn Niederhauser with the pseudonymed Freddy Fast, 10th quickest. 11th goes the way of replacement driver Joachim Bölting, ahead of Piotr Krodzun, and then it is Cora Schumacher who rounds out the 13 that we have in the GT4 Central European Cup here at the Nurburgring this weekend. So again, a good variety of cars and another rather jumbled grid. It's going to give us 2 very interesting races, that's for sure. Yeah. And again, the leading, 6 covered by under a second, and it's not that big a gap between the next gaggle of cars either. Again, you're talking just fractions of a second. So with the exception perhaps really of Cora Schumacher, who's 4.7 seconds off pole, 2.2 away from the rest, it's all pretty competitive ahead of her. So next on track here at the Nürburgring will be qualifying for the Mittelrhein Cup. They will be on track in about 8 minutes' time, all being well, on the hour. This is going to be qualifying for race 3 for this combination of trucks from the British and the Dutch championships. And they had a race yesterday that was rather dominated by Ryan Smith, but the story didn't end post-checkered flag because it rumbled on into the steward's room where Jamie Anderson, who took 3rd yesterday, the former rally driver, was then given a penalty for overspeeding. So it meant that Stuart Oliver, who'd not looked all that sparkling really in the race, managed to hook up with a far better result because others were being given a penalty. So Stuart Oliver, having been struggling in 5th place for a while, ended up with 3rd, but it was Ryan Smith who was the winner yesterday. And we'll get those tracks out onto the circuit very shortly. David Jenkins, one of the front runners, won the stop-go competition that we had last night, or go-stop to be accurate about the way it works. Yeah. And Dave Jenkins will now try and go one better than he did in terms of the race yesterday and get ahead of Ryan Smith. But Ryan proved to be very, very tough to stop yesterday.
But then was slower in these other truck in the next race. So obviously switching from truck to truck, you can't take the speed that you had in one through to the other because they're obviously slightly different. And the fact that you've just won a race and jumped straight into a truck is going to drop your energy levels.
Yeah, I think Ryan's doing every truck race this weekend, isn't he? He's doing the 4 Mittelrhein Cup and the 4 European races, so he's earning his money.
Yeah.
And getting value for money as well.
But he's not doing the go stop.
No, he's been allowed off that for good behaviour, I think.
Yeah.
He needed to take on some liquid last night.
Yeah.
Great character, Ryan Smith, who's only been in the sport for, what, 4 years, but has won a huge amount in a very short space of time.
Yeah.
And as I say, on the hour, they will venture onto the circuit. So the track just being swept. We'll get them on track very shortly indeed. And then after this qualifying session, and it may be that Ryan Smith doesn't either do all of it or much of it, because he'll have to get himself ready for the next race after that. But here they come, and there you've got Dave Jenkins there, number 69 in the MAN, 95 Ricky Collett in the very smart MAN, the haulage contractor ahead of Heinz Werner Lenz. Number 11 there you can see is Martin Gibson, part of the Stuart Oliver team. 23 is Jamie Anderson then, who lost that podium finish yesterday for overspeeding. And
79, Luke Taylor just coming out. He was very competitive yesterday.
Taylor made a bad start yesterday, didn't he? And that rather compromised him in the first few laps. But when he gathered it all up, he was very quick indeed. 42 is Luke Garrett.
Yeah.
His late father Ross was a multiple champion in, admittedly, days when we didn't have quite the same level of competition.